Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the Krig 6 assault rifle, which I have dubbed the king of consistency. The Krig 6 is one of the most popular weapons in Black Ops Cold War right now, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the pro player rifle of choice as well. I don't keep up with the competitive scene as much as I should, but I have seen them using it a lot, along with the QBZ and a few other little things. The Krig 6 is, in my opinion, a very good rifle, but it does have a few major drawbacks that we're going to talk about today, and it's really almost a one-trick pony. There's basically one thing it does really well, good enough to even cancel out 2 or 3 other drawbacks, and if you want to support me or In Depth when you buy anything in the store, battle pass, skins, whatever, you can use creator code DRIFTOR. It has to be all caps, and that O has to be a number pad 0, which does technically make this video sponsored by Activision, but I do hope that you decide to support me. The Krig 6 bullet velocity is 625 meters per second, which is average for assault rifles. Most of the assault rifles in this game have a number pretty similar to that one, but it's just overall good. It's a little bit closer to tactical rifle territory, and it's going to perform very well in this game. It's going to feel closer to hit scan than most of the other weapons. The maximum damage range is 51 meters, which is just downright awesome. It's the best in the assault rifle class. Very rarely will you be having fights beyond 51 meters unless you're playing Dirty Bomb or maybe Combined Arms or something like that. And then there are barrels that can boost this even further, so you can push this well into like sniper light machine gun territory if you want to. The Krig just has amazing range, and that's one of its strong suits. The Krig's base damage is 35 up close, and then after 50 meters it decreases down to 28. So even though there is a change in shots to kill over range, I think the majority of the time that you use this weapon you're going to be dealing that 35 damage a shot, and it's going to be very consistent in its subjective feeling time to kill. Speaking of time to kill, let's start with how many shots it takes to kill. It'll be 5 or 6 shots to kill with body shots depending on your range from the target, but I think the vast majority of this time you're going to find that that is going to be a 5-shot kill weapon. And if you're going for headshots, it's going to take 4 headshots to kill. So getting a whole bunch of headshots with this weapon doesn't really help your time to kill a whole lot, because the headshot damage was recently nerfed from 1.4x down to 1.2x. Apparently it was just too high a damage for how easy it was to get headshots. So when it comes to like pure damage and numbers, headshots are not very efficient on the Krig, and I would tell you that for most players it makes more sense to go with body shots, but they're still really easy to get. I still go for them. You see me doing it in this video. The Krig is just such an accurate weapon that it's not that challenging to go for headshots, so I do it anyway, and I push myself and I go for those 4-shot kills. Because of a lot of this stuff and how it performs, I don't think barrel attachments are an absolute requirement on the Krig, but I still use them. A lot of the weapons in this game have like really bad range or really bad bullet velocity or low rate of fire, and there's something really important they need from that barrel, which tends to be the most important attachment. The Krig really doesn't need any of that, so if you want to skip the barrel attachment category and go with something else, it's one of the few weapons I would recommend that. That being said, later in this video I'm actually going to recommend boosting this bullet velocity even more so I can treat it more like a hit scan, which works well for me even if it isn't 100% necessary. Krig's rate of fire is 652 rounds per minute, which is a little bit slow for assault rifles. It's not the slowest. The AK-47 is the slowest, but it's not much faster than the AK. It's not a bullet hose. There is a noticeable penalty for missing your shots, and it's just not going to be a spray weapon. So with a kind of average damage and a slower time to kill, the way this maths out is that the Krig body shot time to kill is 368 milliseconds, which is the slowest in the assault rifle class. For comparison, the XM4 is about 330, the AK-47 is about 300, the Groz is 320, and even the QBZ, which very few people use, is 352. So this one is the slowest in class. It's not crazy slow, it's not painfully slow, it's not outrageously slow, but in a face-to-face gunfight against most of the other assault rifles and some machine guns, you will lose if you try to do the cowboy quick draw. We both shoot at the same time. You're just going to be at a disadvantage with this weapon, which is probably its biggest weakness, probably its biggest drawback. There's a couple of others that we're going to be talking about today, but just not being able to kill competitively is a pretty rough one to deal with. One of the great things about this weapon is that the recoil is lower than average for assault rifles, and it's very precise. This weapon is the king of consistency not only for its long range performance, but also its excellent recoil control. The way this works is that the first 10 shots or so are very tightly clustered and only a little bit vertical. More importantly, the first about 10 shots are also extremely precise. They do the exact same thing over and over and over again, so it is very easy to predict, master, and learn the minimal amount of recoil on this weapon. However, after about 10 shots, there's a noticeable jump, a gap in your recoil pattern. It will sharply kick up, and a totally different pattern is going to take over that is pretty similar. Well, not totally different. There's a similarity to the first, but it's worse. It's a little bit more horizontal, a little bit more vertical. It stretches a little bit more. It's not as good and not as precise. So really the way to play well with this weapon is to shoot about 10 to 15 shots at a time, take a short break, and let it reset, unless you just absolutely have to spray. So using that first 10 shots of ultra precise recoil is what makes the Krig so good. This is one of a few weapons in the game that kind of defies its other stats. Typically, no matter how low the recoil is or how easy it is to use, I don't like low time to kill weapons, but this one I think is competitive enough in its time to kill. It's within a reasonable area, and its consistency is just beautiful. If I know how my gun's going to kick, if I know how it's going to perform, I know how it's going to be long range, and it's got good bullet velocity, and the recoil is going to be really tight, I can pick targets and beam them at long ranges. The Krig will, for at least a little bit, feel like a laser, and I can get a lot of good work out of that little bit of time of precise shooting, and I think that's why pro players use it as well. They're usually fighting people on head glitches, they're trying to cut corners, they're peeking things, and this is the perfect weapon for them. If you're a high skill player playing in really competitive lobbies, this might be a good weapon for you, because something that's consistent and easy to use in the hands of a high skill player is probably better than something that kills really fast but kicks all over the place. The Krig 6 iron sights are, in my opinion, not good enough for long range because of the goofy shape. The hind sights are really huge, they kind of get in the screen, they shake around. The foresights are of a reasonable shape, but between that and the gas and the muzzle flashes and stuff, I really lose track of my targets at long range, and I don't think it's a beautiful weapon to run with iron sights. Handling stats on this weapon are the same as most of the other assault rifles. Aim down sights at 300 milliseconds, sprint out time is 266. There's not much variety in handling stats for assault rifles, so this is very average and very normal, very comparable to everything else. The Krig's hipfire is 7.5 milliradians, which is, again, normal for assault rifles, and the base reload time is 2.4 seconds, which is normal. Oddly, most of the other weapons I've been reviewing have either been slow or fast, so it's kind of weird to get a normal one, but the whole section of handling for this weapon is all just very average for assault rifles. One thing I would recommend, though, is I would recommend some big mags and or some fast mags. Since the damage isn't amazing and the DPS is a little bit low, if you're missing any of your shots, you might find it difficult to kill multiple people, so I found it very beneficial to have large mags on this weapon so that I can afford to spray a little bit and run away without having to reload if I don't want to. But at the end of the day, the Krig 6 is pretty bad in every way, or it's either bad or average, except that extreme precision makes up for all of it. Having a weapon that is that precise and is that easy to aim with and is that predictable allows high skill players to take advantage of it and do things that they normally wouldn't with an otherwise weak weapon, and I can see why competitive players like it as well. But I don't think that the Krig is really the best weapon for pubs. If you're playing public matches against enemies of average to normal skill, and you're in that same, normal skill bracket as well, it's not going to be as beneficial to you to have a super precise weapon, perhaps one that kills faster or just deals a lot of damage per shot like the AK or something like that might be more valuable. Though for those of you that like to sit back, if you like to, say, tactically control certain areas and choke points on the map, the Krig 6 will perform almost as well as a light machine gun. The LMGs have a TTK and range advantage, but the Krig 6 is more mobile, so you can reposition a little bit faster. I even built a class for that, which we're going to be talking about right now. Well, maybe not next. First, I want to talk about my suppressed class that I use in public matches to just run around and hammer people. You can kind of see it on the screen. The first attachment I like to use is the regular suppressor, because the agency suppressor has too big of a penalty to my effective damage range and bullet velocity. Those are two things about the Krig that are just excellent, and I want them to continue to be excellent, so I don't want to penalize them too much. Then I use the Ranger barrel to boost bullet velocity. I don't have to do this. It's not a requirement, but it's nice. It makes it feel good at long ranges. It makes it feel more hit scan. I don't have to think about my bullets a whole lot, and I think that subjectively helps me aim better. Then I'm going to be running the Field Agent Grip, which just reduces recoil tremendously. I've hurt my shooting move speed a lot, so when I shoot with this weapon, I stick in place. Then I'm going to be running the Airborne Elastic Wrap so I can drop shot as needed, and it just ADSs really quickly. Then the Raider Stock so that I can aim walk movement speed or strafe around corners really quickly, but it does kind of nuke my hipfire accuracy, and I'm not really fixing that on this class. This is very similar to the AK class from the last episode, and it's designed for you to be used in small to medium public matches so that you can move around, you can host somebody, then you can reposition and kind of stay off the radar and take advantage of those first 10 shots as needed. Probably not the overall best class, but it's a fun class and you can work with it. The overall best class is the one that I'm about to recommend now. I like running the VisionTech 2X sight on the Krig. I feel that I'm using it at longer ranges more than most of the other assault rifles, so 2X is good for me. I don't think that it's good enough to justify a 3X, though the 2 to 4X SUSAT multi-zoom is also really good. We're going to be running the same suppressor again for the exact same reasons. It keeps me off the radar and doesn't really hurt any of the other attributes of the gun very much. The same Ranger barrel, except this time it's going to be far more important than we run the Ranger barrel since we're going to be using this one at long ranges. SWAT 5mm laser, little ADS time penalty, but it's going to take care of that stock penalty that we'll be putting on there later. Then, instead of running the Field Agent Grip, and I think this is an important one, I went with the SFOD Speed Grip, which gives me horizontal recoil control, minor penalties elsewhere, and a huge boost to sprinting move speed. The sprinting movement speed that you get from this grip is effectively like Lightweight or Lightweight Pro from other Call of Duty games, and since the weapon's recoil is mostly vertical, I don't need a whole lot of vertical recoil control to aim accurately with this weapon. Just a little bit of horizontal recoil control to tighten it up, exactly like this grip offers, goes a really long way for me, and the other penalties are so minor that I can ignore them. The reason I want that extra 10% move speed is so that I can more quickly sprint to the position that I'm going to head glitch and post up at, and it allows me to both reposition more safely, but also to reposition in areas that other people may not so easily reach. I'm going to be running the very last magazine on this one, Salvo 50 round mags, huge penalty to aim down sights time, but a huge boost to my ammo count. We'll fix that completely with the Airborne Elastic Wrap that you just talked about before. And again, the Raider stock, that'll more or less cancel out the hipfire gain that I got from the SWAT 5mm laser, but you do get some very nice aim walking movement speed, which is helpful for this weapon because you're going to be strafing back and forth around corners. Of note on this class, if you wanted to run any of the sighting point optics, those are also acceptable, any of the flashlights. I didn't personally run them because I didn't want to take any of the additional penalties. I don't want to slow my weapon down too much more than it already is because it doesn't need to be slow time to kill and slow handling. I can deal with the slow time to kill over range, is just so long as it handles decently, so I kind of went that path with the weapon. And overall, it performed very, very well for me, and I think that it will perform well for you too. Guys, that's all for this episode of In Depth. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.